Hello Tribe, I am so pleased to have Mark from the Man in Seat 61 with me today. So many of you use this website. It is the encyclopedia of global train travel and also has some ferry information as well. If you haven't looked at the site, I'll put the link, but I'm sure most of you will have used it. And many of you have contributed questions, which I'll be asking Mark today. So thank you very much for joining me. And we'll work our way through the questions and just have a chat about how this site has become so huge. And actually what I love about it is it's your passion, isn't it? And I think that comes across because that's why there's so much detail. You're just trying to share as much information and knowledge as you can. We were just chatting actually about how it came about. So I want to know what was the first train trip that you actually put on the website?
Well, I think it was that first collection of major cities from London. London to Barcelona, London to Vienna, London to Venice, that sort of thing. Those key cities just on one page. That's how it all started.
And I think one of the things that I love about it is the detail. So when you're going on your train travel journeys, I guess you have a set number of things that you're checking off from, how in advance you should be booking the ticket, what you expect when you get there. I noticed you do a lot of videos now, which is great because that actually gives you the full experience of what a train, particularly a sleeper train, is going to be like when you get there and what you can expect to see in each compartment. But I'm guessing a lot of it is you're taking down so much detail. So how many of these trips are you actually doing a year? Because it's a lot of information to collate.
Not enough. I have to save up man miles with Mrs. 61, who has to hold the fort with the kids while I go off and research. But yeah, detail. I mean, the problem is, how do you make it simple and provide detail? I'm not sure I found the answer to that because people need it simple, but then they also want to know the detail. So it's a sort of balancing act, isn't it? But I know the questions people ask because I get 30 or 40 emails a day. In fact, if I go away for a couple of days, I sometimes get buried when I come back. But if you know what people ask, and sometimes these are questions that aren't even addressed on official websites, train company websites, then I can address that in what I say. So I know that people are always trying to look too far ahead with European trains. I've had people saying, why aren't there any trains in November when it's February? And you have to say, well, people here in Europe don't book trains to go and see grandma or go to a business meeting in November when it's February. They book for next week or next month, tops. So you have to address that. And particularly the overseas market are always worried about their luggage, obsessed with luggage. So whereas a British person knows perfectly well, they just take their bags on and stick them on a rack. It's like that in Britain. It's like that in Europe, mainland Europe. An American or Australian visitor is really concerned about what they do with their bags. So take a photograph of the luggage rack, show it on the site and say, that's where you stick your bag. Oh, it's suddenly they can see it.
Yeah, I think that's a great thing because it's a combination of visual and written. I think it's really organised. I have to say it's really easy to navigate. There's so much information, but when you click, because you've got different topics along the top, so you can have a look at accommodation now, you can have a look at sort of key routes or scenic routes down the side. I think to me, it's very easy to navigate.
Well, that's good. It's a bit of a monster.
It is. I mean, you must have tens of thousands of pages on there now. Are you still programming it for yourself?
I think it's about 300 or 400.
And are you still programming it?
It doesn't all change.
Are you still managing your own website? Are you still uploading everything yourself?
Yes. I mean, a website's great when you're on your own because in theory, you write something, you put it online, and it does its thing. But of course, these pesky train companies keep changing stuff. So it's trying to keep up by reading the rail press, news releases, keeping your ear to the ground, being tipped off by travellers. It's a full-time job just keeping it updated as things change.
But it is a passion, isn't it? I think that's what I love about it.
It has to be. It certainly is, yeah.
I'm going to go on to some of these questions. I had lots of questions from the community. Let me go to the first one. So actually, this is something you just touched on because it says members are keen to know optimum lead times. But actually, I guess that, as you've answered, it's very different depending on the location in the world, isn't it? So there's probably not one set answer for that.
Even in Europe, some railway companies are now offering bookings up to 6 months ahead, including Eurostar. Most are still only offering 90-day booking horizon, a few 120 days. And of course, in some parts of Central and Eastern Europe, it's still only 60 days. So it's a real hodgepodge. And it's one of the biggest issues with European rail. In fact, it's even more confusing if booking is half open. When you look too far ahead, sometimes you'll find the Italians have loaded the afternoon trains, but not the morning trains. So I get emails saying, why have they cancelled the morning trains? And the answer is just wait a bit and they'll all appear.
How strange. Okay, that sounds very odd. And also, I think when people are planning ahead with their holidays, they almost want to know, don't they, in advance that they've got something secured. And one of the questions or points that's come up actually, because I chatted to Ed a couple of weeks ago and I shared one of his articles, was the cost of train travel. A lot of families are finding that actually so many of the train companies charge a higher rate than a flight, for example. I mean, it's a different mindset. I guess it's more like, as Ed says, it's the journey is the experience, isn't it? So I think it's actually having to think of it not just a way of getting A to B, but actually have it as a pleasurable part of your trip. But do you think there is a problem with maybe train fares being too high?
Well, I think there's several answers to this. First of all, if you book direct with the train operators and you book in advance, just as you would do with a flight, but of course not too far in advance, then you can find cheap tickets too. The best bargain I've found so far is 29 euros from Brussels to Prague.
Ooh.
Or you can go from Paris to Turin or Milan in Italy from 29 euros. So the cheap fares are there. The second answer, of course, is that it's not a level playing field. Up to 30% of an airline's cost can be fuel. They're a very fuel thirsty industry, and they get their fuel tax free. It's like you or I filling up our car for 60 pence a litre. So it's not a level playing field. The other thing, of course, is, as you say, the train journey is part of the holiday. It's not something nasty that you have to do at the beginning and the end. So it's a different mindset.
Yeah, definitely. Okay, this is one which is quite good because it's cost cutting. So, are there any cost cutting tips for families when they're booking trains? Is there any way of avoiding seat reservations if you all want to sit together, for example?
Well, seat reservations on a lot of European trains are optional, so you don't have to make them. You can sit where you like. I'd actually say for a few euros extra, they're a good idea because it means you can. It makes sure you can sit together even though it's on a busy train. But cutting cost is really about booking ahead and looking for the cheapest tickets. It's the same as flying. Midweek is usually cheaper than a busy Friday afternoon
Mm,
or a Sunday afternoon, that sort of thing.
true. Are there any lesser known scenic rail routes that you would recommend?
Oh, there's lots. One of my favourites is from Belgrade to Bar in Montenegro. Now that route is absolutely stunning through the mountains of Montenegro. The rails don't go underneath the mountains through a tunnel; they go on top of the mountains. That's basically how it feels, with massive valleys, really rugged mountains up there. And that costs pretty much an all-day journey for 20 euros. Or if you're lucky, you might get a discount at 9 euros 90.
Oh, amazing. I love your knowledge. I love the fact that the computer's going ding ding, picking out the information. Um, do you have a favourite train ride that you've ever taken? I mean, what is the ultimate?
I have lots. Right up at the top is one fairly close to home, London to Fort William on the West Highland sleeper, the Caledonian sleeper. And the reason is I used to work in London. That sleeper would take me from the big smoke on a Friday night, a little travelling hotel with lounge car and private sleeper rooms. And you'd go to bed 80 miles an hour on an electrified main line, swishing through boring places like Tring and Hempstead. And I can say that because my brother lives at Tring. And you'd wake up at 30 miles an hour with the diesel struggling on the front of the train, twisting and turning on a single track in the middle of the West Highlands with deer bounding away from the train. And of course, when you got there, Fort William, 10 minutes walk from the bottom of the trail up Ben Nevis. What a fantastic place to end up. So that's absolutely great. But I'd say number two, probably the Bernina route across Switzerland from Chur to Tirano. It's a great way to get from Paris or Zurich to Italy if you don't mind being a bit slower than the main line. And then if we go to the States, the California Zephyr from Chicago to San Francisco, a 2-night, 2-day journey across the flatlands of Nebraska, over the Rockies, along the Colorado canyons, and lastly through the Sierra Nevada in California. for as little, you could actually go coast to coast for about $230 US, 3
That's
days, 2
amazing.
nights, if you don't mind a seat. And that's got to be one of the world's great travel bargains too.
Wow, that sounds fabulous. The thing is, with these videos, I find a lot of families go off and it just really inspires them to, you know, sort of plan ahead and start incorporating these into their travel plans. The only thing is, I wanted to ask you, where is your next trip?
I haven't got one planned. My
Oh,
son wants us to go to Greece for our summer holidays because he's friends with a Greek family at school, and so of course we'll take the train down to Italy and catch the ferry across to Patras. That's a nice way of getting to Greece.
oh, lovely, brilliant. And actually, I hope you don't. Well, thank you. I won't take any more of your time because I know how busy you are with all your work. Well, thank you and have a lovely day.
You too.
Take care.
Bye for
Bye.
now.